32 centuries ago, the world didn't fade, it collapsed. Not over centuries, not through slow decay, but in a violent, cascading unraveling that erased entire civilizations within a single lifetime. Cities burned while their rulers still wrote desperate letters. Trade routes that once connected continents fell silent. Empires that had stood for hundreds of years vanished so completely that history itself nearly forgot them. At the center of this catastrophe was a name whispered through ancient inscriptions: the Sea Peoples. They arrived suddenly, by ship, by land, as warriors and families alike. They fought, they settled, they reshaped the map of the ancient world. But for thousands of years, one question remained unanswered. Who were they, really? Because a name carved in stone is not an identity. And then, DNA changed everything. Before the fall, the Bronze Age world was something extraordinary. It was not an isolated kingdom, it was a system. A vast, interconnected network stretching across the eastern Mediterranean, Egypt, the Hittite Empire, Mycenaean Greece, Babylon, each linked through trade, diplomacy, and shared dependence. Ships carried copper from Cyprus, tin from distant Afghanistan, ivory from Africa, and luxury goods from across the known world. Languages blended, kings called each other brother. This was globalization, 3,000 years before the modern world. But this system had a hidden weakness. It depended on stability everywhere. Break one link and the chain strains. Break several and the entire structure collapses. By the late 13th century BC, cracks were already forming. Drought spread across the land, crops failed, earthquakes shattered cities, trade routes faltered, and then came the Sea Peoples. They were not a single army, they were something far more complex, a coalition. Different groups, different weapons, different appearances. Some wore horned helmets, others feathered crowns. They fought with long swords and moved with terrifying speed. But the most unsettling detail wasn't their weapons, it was their families. Ancient carvings show ox carts filled with women and children traveling alongside warriors. This wasn't just an invasion, this was migration. They weren't just attacking civilizations, they were searching for somewhere to live. Egypt recorded their arrival as a great victory. Pharaoh Ramses III claimed to have defeated them. But even in triumph, his inscriptions reveal fear. Because these weren't isolated raids, they were part of a larger wave, a pressure building over decades, moving across a collapsing world. And yet, for centuries, their true origins remained unknown, until science found a new way to listen to the past. For most of history, the Sea Peoples left no voice of their own, no writings, no records, only the accounts of those they fought. But DNA does not lie the way history can. When scientists began extracting ancient DNA from burial sites, especially from early Philistine cities, they discovered something remarkable. The earliest remains carried a clear genetic signal, not from the local population, but from Europe. Southern Europe, the Aegean world. This was not speculation based on pottery or armor styles. This was biological evidence. It confirmed what historians had long suspected. At least some of the Sea Peoples came from across the Mediterranean. But the story didn't end there. Within just few generations, that distinct European genetic signature began to fade, not because the people disappeared, but because they integrated. They intermarried, they settled, they became part of the local population. The invaders became neighbors, and eventually, indistinguishable from those they once displaced. What DNA revealed was not a simple answer. There was no single homeland, no unified identity tying all the sea peoples together. They were exactly what the ancient Egyptians described, a coalition. Multiple groups from different regions brought together by shared pressure, drought, famine, instability, collapse. They were not an external force invading a stable world. They were a product of that world breaking apart. Displaced populations, former mercenaries, survivors of failing systems. In other words, they were not the cause of the collapse. They were its consequence. And in the end, they didn't vanish into mystery. They stayed. They built new cultures. They reshaped societies. Their descendants blended into the genetic fabric of the Mediterranean. The sea peoples did not disappear. They became part of the world that came after. And in a very real sense, they became us.